We're here. We are ready to go. Happy weekend to you. This is the Real Money Pros, here to cover any financial topic that you have top of mind. Are you running into some issues? Do you have some concerns? Is the drop in the NASDAQ and these high-flying tech companies making you feel a little rattled based on the great growth that we've seen thus far year to date? Any topic that you have, you want to talk about taxes, you want to talk about retirement planning, we are here for you, and we are live. A lot of great financial programs over the weekend, but I think we might get a bit of a leg up because we're here. We're live. Phone lines are open, 979-59-MONEY. You can also text message the program as well. That's 979-596-6639. Not here to sell. We are here to guide. We are a sponsor-driven program. We are practicing fiduciary financial advisors here at your service. I'm Jeremiah Bates. She is Alexandra Lundgren. Oh, so many topics to cover. I'm so glad that we have 3 hours based on where you're listening. You might almost get us for an hour, so you might get us for the full 2, or maybe you missed for the first few segments. Whatever the case is, go to therealmoneypros.com. You can catch our episodes, previous content, educational content that we list there as well. Topics. I want to hit on SpaceX. I want to hit on these huge IPOs that are coming right down the corner. But first, Alex, I want to start on a topic that pretty much applies to everybody. I mean, it really does. I mean,
yeah,
there's
no avoiding this.
There is not, and this is in the realm of if something were to happen to you, meaning if you were to hit a unexpected expiration date, or
even an expected one,
going on to the great beyond, it just because that you are no longer here in the physical form, you likely are still going to leave over the physical items that you've accumulated throughout your life, and also the accounts that you've invested in and delayed gratification, all that, otherwise known as your estate.
Correct.
And Alex, you and I, we've seen the good, the bad, the ugly when it comes to settling these estates.
Yeah, and some really ugly.
Sometimes they're boring, which you could argue are good, and we've seen some really ugly ones, which is just really unfortunate, which from the outside, before that would happen, you'd look at a very tight-knit, close family that seems to just get torn apart at the threads because there is an expectation of inheritance and who deserves this and who does not deserve that. All this being said, Alex, we were having this discussion earlier this week because we got a number of clients that they walk all different paths of life, that have they got lots of kids, they're a part of a big extended family, and some clients that are a little less than that, and other clients where, hey, married, widowed, single, kids have passed away, meaning now they're at a point where they don't have that
default.
Great word, that default, because generally speaking, most individuals will default to, hey, I got kids, I got grandkids, I got this charity, this is where I'm earmarking this money to. But for that segment of America,
which is 25%, by the way.
So 25%, is that the entire population?
Uh-huh.
So 25% of the population basically is they don't have a direct child or grandchild to leave an inheritance to.
To leave an inheritance, or to make medical power of attorney or financial power of attorney decisions, all of those things are so important.
And you bring up really good points. So let's set aside the inheritance side of things. Let's look at who is in your corner or who can help you. Because generally the default is, hey, kids, my mom, for instance, I got 2 older brothers, youngest of 3, and it's a little rough growing up, I must say, but now we all get along. It's great. We're close friends. We talk once a week, but we're all of the same mindset. It's like, hey, if my mom was to arrive at a point where she needs care, then we're all going to work in tandem here to make sure that she's got the care, she's got whatever we got to do to lend a helping hand based on our ability to help. Now, that could be the case for some of the listeners out there. That could be the case of, I don't have a lot of confidence in this person that they're going to be to help me. Meaning, if you arrive at a point where you're aging and just health or physically, whatever the case is, you no longer have the ability to handle your affairs, it's very important to be forward-looking to arrive at who is going to help with these decisions, who is going to help if I am incapacitated in any way, shape, or form. So this is pre-death. but
Correct.
a point where you really need some help and someone that you can trust. I mean, what do people do? What do people look for? And how can you get some peace of mind on this?
Yeah, so quite often there will be a lot of thought given to, distant nieces or nephews or friends, different things that way. Usually if they're married, then obviously the spouse for each other. But when you think of them picking friends or their spouse, everybody's already aging at the same time and the same rates. So somebody's going to be the last person standing with nobody to help or that's in a capacity to do so. So, and it's according to what I've been reading, a lot of people, it's problematic to appoint a niece or nephew because quite often they don't live where you do. You're not close to them. So it's kind of almost like a stranger. And those situations tend to be fraught sometimes with a little bit of a conflict that the person making care decisions is also standing to inherit and are the most likely for elder abuse.
Which, statistically speaking, generally the highest percentage of perpetrators when it comes to elder abuse or financial exploitation, it's the people that you wouldn't think. It's like they're
the people you trusted the most.
And they're the closest to the situation, which means that there's not a lot of oversight for them. I mean, they're the ones that are arguably in control and at the helm and at in the driver's seat of all this. And those are usually the ones that are acting nefariously. So,
so if there isn't somebody available, it is defaulted to the state under their guardianship or conservatorship programs. So like if you show up in the hospital incoherent and unable to make your decisions and there's nobody, no emergency contact who can reach and no documentation, because it's not a default person in those situations, it's not a default a spouse and then a child type situation, it will become a court-ordered state a person. So we're talking a person who's truly isn't knowing you. And if you don't have documents that give your directives, they have to do the best they can. So and I would hate to be in that position, either side.
And I've heard this comment before. It's like, I'll be dead. To call me life is in the toilet at that point. If I pass away, I don't care what happens. I think it's a little unrealistic. Yes, unrealistic. And I think it's a bit of a burden, whoever the state would then look in the order of operations or who is tasked to settle this estate. I mean, even if they were looking to receive an inheritance or not. But looking at so you mentioned documents. I think it's important to kind of walk this back and say, okay, you're listening to this. You're like, I fall into this category and I haven't really put that much thought into it. I have thought about it. Now that you're talking about it, it's bringing this all top of mind. And I probably should do something. And again, this is probably the number one can that gets kicked down the road with meeting with so many households over the years where, so tell me about your estate plan. Yeah, I got to get that done. I know. I did a handwritten one before we went on a trip to Mexico about 12 years ago. But it's on the back of a bar napkin. So what we're talking about when we say these documents, this is the estate plan, meaning that hopefully you're working with an estate planning attorney, someone who's got experience, and that is what they do, meaning they're not an attorney of all trades. They focus and specialize in some level of estate planning. Or, there's some online resources out there, which some are better than others. Some are better than others. I've heard okay things. I've heard bad things about them. So me personally, I tend to lean on a person that you can engage with, that you can talk this through. They can give you some insight, some perspective based on their history working, hopefully with many households. Yeah, and seeing how things get interpreted in the courts in your state can sometimes be a very valuable thing because what you think you picked and how your state interprets it might be two different things. And that's what those documents do. It's that decoding of, okay, what do I want to actually happen? Who are the people that I want to be in my corner, helping with my care, helping with my medical and financial decisions? And then ultimately, when I pass away, who is going to inherit and who's going to control or facilitate the settlement of my estate? That's where the estate plan rubber really hits the road. It's these legal documents that are recognized by the court or these institutions that are legally binding that they need to adhere to. And the people that you put in that position, it's so important to be cognizant of who is in that role because they're going to have a fiduciary responsibility. So again, what are some things that you need to keep in mind, top of mind, if you do not have kids and you want to make sure that things are stacked in your favor for settling your estate and helping you as you age? We got to take a break. We'll be right back. And welcome back to the Real Money Pros. Again, we are live. Phone lines are open, 979-59-MONEY. Send us a text message, 979-596-6639. We're talking about estate planning. Listen, if you do not have kids, if you're part of that 25% of the country's population that does not have a child, or does nearby family members also fall in that? Or is it just no children?
This number is specifically no children, either by choice or life circumstances.
Okay. So important decisions that you have to consider when you do not have children or really family nearby or someone that can take on that role. You got to ask yourself, who is going to be in the position to make healthcare decisions for you?
Yep.
Who's going to make financial decisions for you? And long-term care decisions for you if you are unable to.
Right. And all of those interrelate because some of those healthcare and long-term care decisions have different costs. So your financial decisions are going to be part of that directive, is deciding, is this an appropriate cost? Is it the cost that you as a person would pay? And the thing that's so different about estate and long-term care planning for people who are childless, who aren't, is there is no need to preserve an inheritance. So it should be specifically directed to whatever it takes to take care of this person who is passing away or ill or needs additional surgeries or whatever it is, rather than just the standard, what is it? Health, education, maintenance,
that template,
support,
that
right?
templated language that you see more times than not inside
it's not
of these
enough.
Estate planning. Because
in this situation, it's not enough, because in that situation, the intent is for somebody not to go crazy and spend everything indiscriminately.
Well, yeah, so this is pretty common for, let's say if you have a child who's in their later teens, maybe early 20s, and you have a sizable estate, it's like, yeah, I don't want to turn over everything to maybe a 20-year-old if I were to have an early passing or an unexpected passing. So generally there are rules within how that inheritance or those assets or the money can be distributed to said beneficiary.
And they err on the conservative side.
And they err on the conservative side, meaning there is going to be a person, whether it's the executor or the trustee of that trust, that has the fiduciary obligation to adhere to those rules, which
you can't lower somebody's standard of living, but you also can't raise it. And so one of the examples that is given is if a person who needs special transport to a facility for a surgery that's going to definitely extend and improve their quality of life, in that standard trust language, it's not allowed. But if there's no one who's specifically inheriting, why would that not happen? It should, and it should be covered in that language to allow for that.
And that's why building this decision-making team within these legal documents, because again, if you are incapacitated, your voice is not being heard. So what's going to speak the language of, hey, here's what I want to happen, is how you've crafted those documents and who are the role players that you've put in this whole plan. And it's a decision-making team. Power of attorneys, key, very important. It gives them the legal authority to make these decisions, financial decisions or healthcare decisions, because this is while you're alive. Now, to be clear, power of attorney ceases to basically exist once you pass away. So these players are strictly there in place to make these decisions while you're alive and most likely incapacitated, or you just don't have the facilities mentally or health-wise to actually get these things done.
And there are professional firms and organizations that do this as a service. They need to be carefully vetted, and people need to understand they're going to pay for it. But that's not necessarily bad. I mean, nobody works for free. I mean, for real. That's just, nobody does. That's called volunteer. And these are businesses, but they're in place for a specific purpose. So it's worth looking into. It's worth vetting and seeing if it makes sense for you.
So these power of attorneys, and again, being thoughtful of who you put in that role, because Alex, you brought up a really good point. I mean, if you're getting up there in age, and let's say you have some good lifelong family friends, and you want to put them in that position, they may be perfect for that role. But if they're up there in age as well, then that might not be the best decision to make if there's a chance that they might predecease you. Now, again, that could happen across the board. You just don't know how life events take place. But again, you want to look at the probabilities. Everything's a possibility. So let's look at the probabilities to stack these things in your favor. So power of attorneys, trustees. You bring up a really good point of these professional trustees or these trust companies. And I can't tell you how many times, again, this is assuming that you've created a living revocable trust that basically states, hey, while I'm alive, I can make changes. And then if I passed away or my spouse were to pass away, then all of our assets are now inside of the trust. And the rules that they laid out in the trust, this trustee has to basically follow these rules and most likely
oversee it,
settle the estate, or maybe there's like a carrying on, and maybe there's co-trustee, things like that. But you got to be mindful of this, because we had a caller, this was a few weeks ago, it was out of Oregon, and he brought up a good point. He's like, parents had a trust and parents passed away, and they had multiple family members listed as co-trustees, and they were in different parts of the country. And the sentiment behind usually with setting up co-trustees is there's some checks and balances. Like maybe we don't want one person to go rogue, so we want two people just to help mitigate that. And a lot of times that makes things a logistical nightmare to just settle the estate. I mean, their story was wild where I forget what bank it was, but they actually had to travel to go to that said bank, and they each had to be at the bank at the same time. We're talking in different time zones. It's just, I mean, so keeping that in mind, especially with trustees too, there's usually a default. Like I know one of the big subjects we're talking about is if you don't have kids,
right?
But one of the defaults to trustees is, okay, I got 3 kids, and my middle son, he's the finance guy. He's like doing this tax stuff or whatever, right. And he's very responsible with money. So we're gonna put him in that role. Be careful with putting family members in that role.
Yeah, they can destroy each other's relationships really quickly when everybody's so emotional because they've lost someone they care about. Things are said that can't be unsaid that really are about emotions.
And there's dynamics too. I mean, the siblings could be great, but if those siblings have spouses and they see a sizable number that's coming down the horizon, that tune could change. And if you don't think so, trust me, we've seen it.
We've seen ugly.
We've seen ugly. And I think a big part of this is that, and most individuals, I think this is probably across the board. I mean, we're in this business. This is such a huge part of how we work with clients, especially around financial planning and retirement planning. And the estate plan is huge. I mean, it's a big component of everything that we're putting together for our clients. But generally speaking, most individuals don't know the whole process of how this actually works. Like they think, oh, parents passed away. There's 3 kids. I get a third of that.
Yeah.
But if in the trust document they said, well, a good portion's going to this charity, a good portion is going to this grandchild, a good portion's going over here, and a good portion's going over there, and it's all inside of the trust, and you have a child, one of the siblings or one of your children administering that trust, all they hear, all that other sibling hears is, wait, I thought I was getting a third of this $3 million estate, and I'm getting significantly less. You must be doing something wrong. You're keeping the money. Things can get strained. And this is why being thoughtful around your estate planning is so important. This is The Real Money Pros. We got to take a break. We'll be right back. We are back. This is The Real Money Pros. I'm Jeremiah Bates, joined with Alexandra Lundgren. We are fiduciary financial advisors. Visit therealmoneypros.com. It's where you can find us. Open 24/7, 365. You can access our sponsors. We're not here to sell anything. We're just here to give advice. We're here to give education. And as in every Saturday, we talk through topics like this. We're talking about estate planning right now, but we cover everything when it comes to taxes, retirement, all of it. And if there's one thing that becomes clear is that good financial decisions do not happen by accident. Good estate plans do not happen by accident. So whether you're navigating retirement, you're trying to be more tax efficient, you're trying to determine what you want to do with your business as far as starting a business, retirement plans through your business or exiting your business, or you just want more clarity around your financial future, period, having the right guidance matters, and that's what we're here for. If you'd like to get connected with a fiduciary financial advisor who can help you, visit therealmoneypros.com, click the Find an Advisor tab, and we'll get you connected with a fiduciary, a Pollen Wealth Management advisor who is a good fit for your situation. And we have great advisors across the country. So if you're listening, there's a good chance that there's a good, solid fiduciary advisor within close proximity to you. Again, phone lines are open. We are live, 979-59-MONEY. That's 979-596-6639. You can send us a text message as well, which we did get a good text coming through. I'm going to paraphrase this, but my wife and I are both in our late 60s, never had kids. We have wills and power of attorney, but we don't know who we'd name if something both happened to us. Is it better to name perhaps a niece or nephew? Should we be looking at a professional trustee / fiduciary instead? Also don't know who to leave the inheritance to. So it's a good question. I mean, this is really along the sentiment of that we've been talking about these first couple segments is, yeah, I mean, if you have no kids, you got to be thoughtful of who you're going to put in as that trustee role. Now, let's make some assumptions here, Alex, that in this case, this couple in their late 60s, they have a will, they have power of attorney, so they've taken the time to set up some level of an estate plan. So now we're asking, well, who should be the role players in here? Like, who should we take into consideration to be the executor, like meaning settle our estate? So let's assume that when they pass away, all of their assets, all their accounts, everything they own, they just want it to pass to someone or somewhere, maybe it's a charity. Then there's going to be someone or an entity in place to make sure that does in fact happen. Otherwise, the executor of the estate. Good way to look at it. So basically, they would be in position. That will, it's a set of instructions that goes to the probate court. So they would notify, someone would obviously be notified if you're passing some way, shape, or form. They'll have access to that will. That will go in front of a probate judge, and then they will put these players in place. So if you chose a professional trustee, well, in this case, it wouldn't be a trustee, but if you put a fiduciary there instead, like an actual trust company, if you will, to be the executor, well, I mean, the benefit, there's pros and cons. The benefit is it's a disinterested party. In theory, they're being hired to do a service. So you feel pretty confident that they would carry that out and it would be relatively straightforward. Again, vetting out what company you use is extremely important. But also the downside of that is they're likely going to be a cost. You know, sometimes they charge a percentage of the overall estate. Sometimes it's a flat fee. I mean,
some of them it's like an annual fee to be in that spot and then an hourly thing. I mean, it just varies. It's all over the board.
Then the next question. So, I mean, if whoever you're going to list, now it doesn't have to be a professional trustee or a trust company. You could put an individual. The question is, who do you have in your close circle that is most likely younger than you, knows your situation, has some level of intimate knowledge of how you want this whole thing to carry out, and they have the time, they actually want to do it, meaning don't just put someone in there, have that conversation first and say, hey, here's prime example through the trust that my wife and I, Tatum, that we put together. Now, this is completely different than a couple who is in their 60s. We have 2 young kids, so a lot of our estate planning is revolving around life insurance proceeds, how things are to be liquidated to the benefit of our 2 kids. And I actually took the approach where it's separated. So if something were to happen to myself and my wife, then my 2 older brothers step in. I have one brother taking over guardianship, and then I have one brother looking over the financial side of things.
We did similar when our kids were younger because I didn't want them to be mad at the person they lived with if they couldn't buy the new sports car when they were 14.
You gotta be. You also have to look at the reality of that, where my brother who would take over the guardianship of my 2 kids, he already has 2 kids, meaning they already they know that lifestyle, right?
Yeah.
And also proximity. They live closer to my mom. They live closer to my wife Tatum's parents. So it's like that family dynamics there. It's like that is not a big disruption for my kids. It's like it's going to be very familiar to them. But also, if my brother taking over guardianship was then having to manage the whole financial situation of this trust that would continue on until my kids are about like mid-20s, that's a lot of work,
Yeah.
especially with his line of business. I mean,
sure.
it's just tough. It's like, hey, I'm going to have my oldest brother who's well vetted and being able to handle his financial affairs, feel very confident, where he can look at that in a vacuum on its own. He can coordinate with my other brother. They got a good relationship. So it's just this good synergy that I think that me and my wife put a lot of thought into, and that's how we set it up. Versus one person handling not a complex trust, but meaning there's some administration and maintenance that needs to go on with it on top of kids. So meaning that's just an example of a thought process that you could put yourself through to determine who is going to be in place to manage your estate after you pass or manage your trust if you pass. So in this case, just take yourself through that same thought process of who you want to be in that position to who's going to handle all of your affairs after you pass away.
And as far as beneficiaries, couple of things that have really been problematic lately, and we're reading, there's headlines every other day, is if you put someone on an account as like a transfer on death or a joint with survivorship, quite often it doesn't matter what your will or your trust says. That's what happens because you've created a contract right there. It's just like a beneficiary on an IRA or a retirement account. That is a transfer by, or even life insurance, that's a transfer by contract you created. So if your will says to split it evenly, but there's 3 accounts over there that are all transfer on death to the same oldest kid, guess who gets them? They don't get split.
No. And there's an important thing to note on that too, because and you're absolutely right. If you had a will and let's imagine you pass away, you assign an executor, and you go through probate, and that executor goes to, let's say, a Fidelity, because let's say you got $1 million brokerage account at Fidelity, and you have a transfer on death, meaning you have a beneficiary on that Fidelity account, but the executor doesn't know that. So they go approach Fidelity and they say, hey, here's the death certificate. We're notifying you of the passing. Here's the court documents that put me as the executor of the estate. So I'm just wrapping everything up. So I'm going to need details on this account, and then we're going to need you to put this in the estate account. And Fidelity's going to be like, you have no authority here. We're not going to talk to you because there's another beneficiary on this. It's like, excuse me, what? And as soon as that one beneficiary finds out about that, they can take control of that money. Now, you could look at that being a bad scenario where if the person received the money just said, screw the will, I'm taking the money. It's like, hey, I'm going to take it and run and just going to cut contact with everyone. That could happen. But let's imagine that you actually assigned that money to the executor. Mm-hmm. Now, in theory, that executor would understand, they'd follow the sentiment, and then they would flow that money per how your wants and wishes that was in the will. But that also creates a bit of estate planning side issue on their end, because now they own that asset, they inherited it. So if they turn around and gift it to the institutions or individuals that you put in the will, that's going to be a gift from that person. So there's complications with that as well. So you bring up a really good point, Alex. But to answer this question that they sent on the text, like, I don't know who to leave the inheritance to. Put some thought into it. Are you charitable minded? Do you have some charities? Is there some institutions that you would like that money to go to? Is there individuals? Really, the possibilities are open. Do you have pets?
Right. And according to the statistics, like 79% of people who are childless have pets. You can look on the adoption pages of any kind of humane society or sanctuary situation, and there are always elder pets that need adopted because their owners passed or went into care. You can do a pet trust. They're not crazy. They're real.
Listen, the little furry family members, we all got them. We've had a dog, passed away a couple years ago, and then we decided to replace the dog with 2 cats. But it's funny, we did not mention the cats in our trust. Probably should update that. But I've seen some interesting estate planning documents that have come across our office where the inheritance to be received was all based on the caring of these pets until they hit a natural demise, right?
Which I get.
No, 100%. They're family members. And it's like you said, Alex, you look at the list of, the number of pets that end up in these, pounds or whatever the case is, it's from elderly folk who pass away and there's no plan. So if you want to make sure that your pets are well taken care of, you can list them and have them receive their inheritance in some way, shape, or form. That's a lot of dog food for those little critters. So we'll be right back. And we're back. This is The Real Money Pros. Again, we are live. If you have questions, call us 979-59-MONEY. We're a money show. We're talking about money topics. And if you want to change the topic, you want to talk about a financial situation that you're dealing with. Maybe it's a windfall. Maybe it's a shortfall. Maybe it's a planning question, a tax question, a retirement question, an estate planning question. Send it our way. That's 979-596-6639. You can send us a text message to that number as well. We got some good text questions coming through the text line. You can also email us, Jeremiah@therealmoneypros.com, Alex@therealmoneypros.com. Visit therealmoneypros.com. It's where you can get more information about us, our educational content. You can get access to our sponsors. We're not here to sell. We're here to guide, give education. We are a sponsor-driven program, period,
Yeah.
End of story. Okay, I want to jump into this question because this is the last segment for this first hour, so let's just jump into it. Listener says, my husband passed away last year. I'm realizing he handled all of our technology stuff. He had the passwords, managed our investments online, paid the bills electronically. Luckily, I had access, but what should I be doing now to make sure my family could access everything if something happened to me? I'm not very technologically savvy, so simple solutions are best for me. Oh, that is such a good question. This digital age that we live in, this becomes paramount. And Alex, you were talking about this earlier during a break. It's like
it's things you don't think about.
Oh, I have a story.
Because this is digital. We're not talking crypto here. I mean, crypto is a digital asset, but we are talking all the accounts and places you sign on the internet. And there is an estimate that most people have 90 different accounts.
Yeah.
90.
Yeah. Well, I mean, let's break this down a number of different ways, right? So even just look at your standard utilities. I mean, Alex, you were talking about a situation with a client where her husband passed away, pretty tragic accident, totally unexpected. But it wasn't like this was done from the standpoint of like control or hiding. But I was doing this many years ago. I would say many years ago.
Happens.
But it's like your utility bills. I mean, the phone, like everything was set up by this one spouse. It was all under their name.
Right.
So then what happened was they couldn't have access. So the actual utility, like the water, the power,
they technically had to shut it off and establish new accounts and new, whatever deposits or whatever needed to happen. They had to close every credit card because they were joint.
Yeah.
And in order to take off the deceased spouse name, it required a new account. All of the like the outside lights and the sprinklers and the heating and the cooling and all those things were on apps on the spouse's phone without the password.
You can't even work the fridge or the washer and dryer because you don't have access to the phone. So let's jump more into this question. We're going to go to the phone lines right now. Again, 979-59-MONEY. It's 979-596-6639. We have Bill calling out of San Diego. Bill, what can we do for you?
I'm a W-2 employee. I typically make just shy of $175. And this year, because the company I work with got acquired, I have an additional $300,000 worth of reported income.
Okay.
So it's the problems you always want, but now that I've got it, I think I'm just stuck paying taxes.
How was it just paid out like as a bonus type situation? How did they pay it to you? Was it shares they cashed in or
shares that cashed in?
Okay. Are they calling it long-term capital gains or are they just calling it income? Do you know?
I think it's just income. A small portion will be federally tax exempt because it's a small business. I forget what that's a form, something like a 1220 or something weird like that, but a portion of it, but not a majority of it.
Okay. Whew.
Well, it's like you said, Bill, it's a good problem to have, but understanding actually in what form you're going to receive this pay is really important, right? Bill, are you a joint filer or are you filing single?
I'm a single filer.
Okay. So single filer, if you're looking at 175, add another 300,000 to that, assuming that's just going to be booked as W-2 pay, which would be subject to ordinary income rates.
Hang on. hang on, I forgot my retirement, which is about another $1.20.
Okay.
Okay, so we got potentially close, just under 500,000 that is actually going to be potentially flowing through as reportable taxable income for you in 2026. Is that correct?
That is.
Okay. So if we're looking at the federal side, because obviously you being in San Diego, California they have their high tax rates, but you're square within that 35% tax rate of ordinary income. So really looking at any low-hanging fruit that we can at your disposal to defer money in there. Since your business, or not your business, but your employer got acquired, does the new owner, are you still eligible to participate in a 401k plan or employee retirement plan?
I do that. That's maxed out.
Okay, good.
I'm doing everything I can do. I just think I'm got one of those good problems to have that you never want to actually have to
just
pay the tax on.
And I would, you have an option to do some estimated prepayments on it, and sometimes that's nice so you don't have to write the check, but there might be some penalties anyway. Talk with your CPA and make sure that they do indicate when you do your tax return that you didn't have this the entire year. If you didn't get it till April, that they're not calculating the taxability for the whole year on these assets. It's just a box they have to check.
Yeah,
it doesn't happen automatically.
And Bill, so a couple other things that you could look at too. I mean, double check your plan summary document. So your plan summary document is obviously it's what your 401k is tied to, assuming that's what your employer offers. But a lot of times you'd be surprised. There could be some additional contributions that you could do and be above and beyond just your standard employee contribution amount. So looking at that that plan summary document, that's going to let you know if you can defer any more money. It may not be on a pre-tax basis, but at least you can find some landing spots. I mean, let me ask you this, Bill. Out of that $300,000 that you're going to receive, do you have it earmarked for any tangible financial stuff, or would you prefer to earmark it for maybe some longer-term growth?
It's just longer-term growth.
Okay.
There's a windfall, so.
Yeah, well, congratulations on that.
No, it's like I said, a good problem to have. Bill, how old are you?
I'm a young 64, I think. Yeah, 60. I know I'm 64, but yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
The mirror says one thing, and how you feel is a whole other thing, right?
Yeah, I mean, Bill, I would say this: if you can get connected with a good advisor, we can start doing some forecasting. Because now at this point, and this is the nice thing, that we have plenty of runway throughout this year in 2026 to do some effective tax planning. And we might find some cool stuff, or we might find that, hey, everything we're already maxing out, like a pre-tax HSA, let's just look at a whole lay of the land, because arguably this could be your highest income earning year in the foreseeable future from a tax standpoint. So let's try to defer those taxes this year the best that we can. Let's get that out of the way off the table. And then what we do next is, okay, let's figure out exactly what this tax bogey is, so you can make sure that you keep enough liquidity back to cover that inevitable tax bill that's coming down the horizon. And then you can effectively park these dollars into a long-term growth vehicle. Looking at your plan summary document, it might allow us to find that maybe you're eligible for a mega backdoor Roth, where you can contribute what's called after-tax dollars, convert it into a Roth, and really juice up and fortify your Roth balance as you're 64. Do you have any retirement date on the horizon, or are you looking to work for a few more years?
At least another 3 years.
Yeah, I mean, with what you're doing, it looks like retirement's probably going to be looking pretty darn good as far as having that resource. And even though you got that tax bogey, if I was to summarize this, Bill, let's find out. Leave no stone unturned, because this is going to be huge of keeping what you earned. It's not about what you make, it's about what you keep. Let's try to keep as much as you can, so you're sending less to the Fed and the state. Keep it in your own pocket. If that means getting creative, let's find a way to be creative. And then obviously look at it a long term, and then you can get more tax efficient from there. Bill, if we can, let's get your number. Josh will get your number, and let's try to connect during the week so we can start putting together some strategies. But certainly appreciate the call. Now, Bill brings up a really good point. These tax bogeys are inevitable for when you make more money. But it's a great question, Bill. We certainly appreciate the call. We are up against the clock. We are coming up on hour 2 of our live 3-hour program. You have questions, you have thoughts. Again, we are live, 979-59-MONEY. That's 979-596-6639. We are back. This is The Real Money Pros, hour number 2 of our 3-hour live program. Live meaning you can call us. Live meaning you can text message us with questions, and we will answer them on air. Phone lines are open, 979-59-MONEY. That's 979-596-6639. You can send us an email, Jeremiah at therealmoneypros.com, Alex at therealmoneypros.com as well. I'm Jeremiah Bates. She is Alex Alexander Lundgren. We are fiduciary financial advisors here for you. The last hour we were covering estate planning. Got a great call from Bill out of San Diego with a question, with a great question, and I think a pretty common scenario that a lot of individuals will run into, especially in this world of mergers and acquisitions, right. And you got these bigger companies, doing deals with these smaller companies, which means exit plans, which means you worked for an employer and that employer sold to a new employer, so now you have a new employer, and if you owned any stock or you got some kind of incentive, it's a great windfall, but also you could run into tax issues. So I just want to re-summarize what Bill had said. He's 64. He's still planning to work for maybe 3 more years. His base pay, I think, is around $175,000. And in 2026, with that merger happening with the company that he worked for, he's going to recognize an additional $300,000 of income. Now, he did mention something that was interesting, where his company said that, hey, a portion of this sale that we did, you had some qualified small business stock, which is not going to be subject to federal capital gains or income. And what he was referring to, not to get too technical here, but it's under Internal Revenue Code Section 1202. Essentially, what this means is you C corporation that has to meet certain criteria, but if that C corporation sells, then a lot of times you are not paying taxes on that appreciated stock, meaning it's tax-free to you. Now, Bill had mentioned that only a small portion of that is the case. So what that tells you is that the way that business sale was structured, there was different components of how the taxes of that sale was categorized. So it sounds like maybe not negligible, but a small part of that income that Bill is going to receive is tied to the stock sale in that business. But what he's running into is potentially $500,000 roughly that is going to hit his income tax return, which is subject to income tax on the Fed side and California side. And he's a single filer. So if we're looking at the federal tax brackets for 2026, he's up very high within the 35% federal tax bracket. And if you look at California, obviously, which works on a marginal tax bracket, he's getting up into 11.3%. So
plus the additional Medicare tax because of the amount that he's into.
Yep. So he's obviously not on Medicare yet because he's 64, but when he turns 65, Medicare is going to look...
the actual 3.9% you pay extra taxes.
Yep.
But yes, that too. Mm-hmm. The net income, what is it that you make too much money, so we think you need to pay extra tax.
Yeah, net investment income tax. But that's only that net investment income tax is only tied to, think of income that you're deriving off of investment. So
right.
Your dividend income or rental property, that net investment income tax is not subject to your W-2. But I guess the point
it depends how they pay this out.
There you go. So the point that we're making is that Bill, with this big windfall that he's getting in this year, is getting throttled through these marginal tax brackets. And the question that he asked, and we didn't have too much time within that segment to really cover it, but he's like, listen, I guess I'm just going to have to pay the taxes and walk away. And it's like, well, not so fast. And that's why I recommended, hey, sit down with an advisor who can really analyze this for you. Number one, look at your plan summary document, meaning the rules and the guardrails and the options that are available in your employer plan. Does it allow for additional contributions on top of just your standard employee amount, which I think for 2026, if you're over 55, is 30... I think it's like 32. Alex, you can look it up. But I think it's
it's right in that range. 32, 33.
So he might be able to defer more money on top of that. Is he eligible for an HSA health savings account healthcare plan? That's an additional close to $5,750 that he could put in on a pre-tax basis into a health savings account. Now, that may not move the needle very much compared to looking at all that money that's coming through his taxable income. So now let's talk about, okay, he mentioned that that amount is likely going to stay liquid. He doesn't need it for lifestyle. He doesn't need for funding. There are investments that are available that can help offset a sizable amount of income,
Right.
one of which, Alex, you were talking about is in the oil and gas industry.
Right.
These types of investments have what's called a depletion allowance that can carry through on your return, which can offset a large amount of income, which is a great tax play. But, again, you also got to understand that a lot of times these are illiquid. It's a non-publicly traded investment, an
Right.
alternative. So you got to be mindful of, how these things are structured and the investment itself. But
There's some things.
the point being that there are things you just got to look at it. I'm not a fan of just leaving it at that of, hey, great income year. All right.
Pay the-
I'm just
pay
gonna,
the bill
I'm-
and move on.
I'm just going to pay the taxes. Like, look at everything and make sure that because again, if you're looking at 35% marginal bracket, over 11% in California, you're looking at an extremely high tax rate where you're going to see such a high percentage of that windfall just going to taxes. So if there's a way that we could peel some of that back and find ways to offset that tax, even if it's not going to be immediately accessible for you in a couple years. We don't even need outsized investment returns just because we're getting that through what you would call tax alpha, just through
Right.
some strategic tax placements, right? And again, I'll be the first one to say, sorry, Alex, I'll be the first one to say that the tax tail can only wag the dog so much.
Correct.
Not everything needs to be looked at a lens through just tax efficiencies. Sometimes the answer is just rip the Band-Aid off and pay the taxes.
Yeah, but you did bring up a good point where he's 65, so 64, so next year is applying for Medicare, and those Medicare premiums are income based, and they usually go back 2 years in your taxes, which means that there's a great potential for either next year or the year after for all of a sudden those premiums to be excessive because of this windfall. There is a form you can submit called SSA Form 44 for life-changing or once-in-a-lifetime type events that he could, potentially petition for the fact that this income event was prior to being on Medicare and so shouldn't affect him. But think of it like if you're on Medicare and you sell a rental property and you have that 1 year of those huge premiums. I would suggest applying to have it waived since it's happening prior to, but definitely something to keep in mind.
Yeah, and if all's said and done, you're still left with a sizable tax bogey, just like I said, you got plenty of runway. Just make sure you're factoring in. Should you start factoring in some estimated payments that you should start doing this year to help lighten the load on that big tax bill that's coming down the horizon? But Bill, it was a great question. But yeah, reach out to us, find a good advisor, find a good CPA who can help you kind of piece all these things together and hopefully lower that tax burden that you have coming down. But bottom line, congratulations. It sounds like a good thing. 3 years off from retirement, getting a good windfall from a company acquisition. It's a good spot to be in.
Yeah,
Again,
fantastic.
Phone lines are open 979-59-MONEY. That's 979-596-6639. Send us a text message. Give us a call. If there's one thing that's been abundant in the financial headlines, especially over the past few weeks, are some attention-grabbing IPOs that are coming right down the corner, with one of which the eccentric Elon Musk and SpaceX. So SpaceX obviously set to IPO, I think June 12th, if I'm not mistaken.
That sounds, June 12th, that Friday.
So June 12th. So you also have OpenAI, which is the company that developed ChatGPT. You have Anthropic, which is another AI large language model developer, and I believe they have Claude. So
Yeah.
When I think the initial valuation of these companies combined, as far as their market capitalization when they're actually hit the public markets, I think it's like $3.5 trillion.
It's a big one.
So it's a big dollar amount, and it's gonna be interesting to see. So what we want to dive into is, what does this SpaceX IPO actually mean?
Yeah. What happens with an IPO?
What happens with an IPO? And if you're interested in investing in SpaceX, like when it IPOs, let's just give you some historical context on how IPOs have fared. And just expect, what volatility, how can you expect this? And also the dynamics of how the index inclusion might happen. Meaning, if you do not want to invest in, let's say, SpaceX directly, you might be indirectly invested in SpaceX if you are just participating in, let's say, your 401k and you're in a mutual fund or other types of index funds. And we'll talk about how that actually is likely to take place, particularly for SpaceX. We got to take a break. We'll be right back. Welcome back. This is The Real Money Pros. Jeremiah Bates, joined with Alex Lundgren. We are fiduciary financial advisors for you. And as we talk through topics like SpaceX IPO and things to pay attention to, or we're talking about the estate planning side of things, what you want to consider in regards to power of attorneys, trustees, and things that you want to keep in mind around your legacy planning, or you're navigating retirement. You want to be tax efficient, like Bill, who called out of San Diego, who's getting a big windfall, and how do we need to approach taxes, business decisions. You probably want clarity around your financial future, and having the right guidance certainly matters. If you want to get connected with a fiduciary advisor who can help you, visit therealmoneypros.com. Click on Find the Advisor tab, and we'll connect you with a fiduciary Apollon Wealth Management advisor who is a good fit for your situation. And again, phone lines are open 979-59-MONEY. That's 979-596-6639. Alex, SpaceX IPO. What's the stat on, because I've been getting a lot of questions from clients just like, hey, what are your thoughts on SpaceX IPO? What are your thoughts? I certainly have some thoughts, but I think we got to look at the entire landscape here.
Yeah.
Like, meaning we can't just look at SpaceX alone in a vacuum. Like, the investment decisions need to be made based on a strategy. Like,
right.
What is your desired outcome here? Mm-hmm. So if you're thinking, man, I've seen all these headlines about SpaceX and could be valued at $1.8 trillion, and there's Elon Musk and might be in the S&P.
Look at what happened with Tesla,
yes.
Right? I mean, fair.
But again, it's always got to come down to, why are you purchasing SpaceX?
Yeah.
Like, why do you want to take your dollars and basically purchase stock in this business? Because that's really what it is at the end of the day.
Yeah.
If you want to invest in SpaceX, you're purchasing SpaceX, or any investment for that matter, for ... what? Now, one thing that is, I think, an inevitability, just my personal take on SpaceX, is strap in and get prepared to feel the G-forces, no pun intended, with its reusable rockets there. I had to put the little pun. But I think the volatility is undeniable here. And that means up and down. But the stats are pretty interesting, where most IPOs, even historically, they're not just a straight up and to the right approach, at least from an investment.
For sure. And I don't know that most people realize that IPOs are almost all already pre-sold. So when the market opens and the trading happens, you're trading with the people who already purchased the IPOs, the original investors who have their shares, the mutual funds, exchange traded, the private equity managers, the ones that can go in and promise that they're going to purchase big amounts, they're pre-sold. I mean, that's just reality.
Known as pre-IPO. Now, what's interesting about SpaceX, and Elon Musk made it a point where, generally speaking, I think it's about maybe 10 to 15%. 15% might be high, where companies do an IPO, like, they set aside that percentage of shares that are available to what's called retail investors, aka myself or Alex. We're just sitting in front of the computer and we want to go buy this pre-IPO
in our own account.
Yeah. And I do know that some of these larger brokers or custodians, like Fidelity, a Schwab, E-Trade, you could submit some interest into this. There's no guarantee.
There's some qualifying criteria you have to have. Some of them are account minimums. Some of them are, some different things, that minimums that you invest.
So meaning if you really think about, well, I want to get into this pre-IPO, meaning like, which I believe it's at $135 a share. Right?
That's the estimate.
No
guarantee.
So if you have a dollar amount that you want to put in there, and if you're approved and you accept it, then you will likely get some shares of, in this case, SpaceX pre-IPO. Because here's the big question.
What happens?
Once it actually starts trading on the NASDAQ exchange and those shares start exchanging hands, does it go up or does it go down? And that's really why it's important to know, well, why are you even buying this in the first place?
Because 60% of them within 3 years are down.
As far as IPOs?
Yeah, below where they started at. Many of them down more than 50% from the initial offering price.
So...
And some of them, it only takes like a week or two for that to happen.
So the probability is that in the first year, just based on historical context, that there's a good chance, whether it's SpaceX or any IPO for that matter, that they'll likely finish that first year at a lower stock price than where it actually...
For 3 years,
IPO.
the first 3 years.
The first 3 years.
Yeah. So in the first 3 years, only 16% doubled. And more than 60% of them were underwater.
And I think it's important to understand why SpaceX is getting so much attention. I mean, number one, just the sheer size of this. If you're talking about a potential $1.8 trillion valuation, it's going to be the largest IPO ever.
Yeah.
Ever. Just on its own.
Well, and I think it's important, too, to talk about, once we go into why SpaceX is huge, why companies even do IPOs. What's the point of them? It's,
to go to Mars.
Yeah,
this one, hey.
Right. Well, there is some appeal in that idea.
Well, let's give you your take. Why do you think Elon Musk wants to take SpaceX public?
Well, so this is a way to pay off original investors who've put a lot of money in, give them an opportunity to cash out if they want to, and raise additional funds. Mm-hmm. So that's usually the reason for IPOs, are both of those.
Now let's look at SpaceX as an investment, meaning if you think that it is a good potential investment based on the business ventures that's within SpaceX, then if you're looking at it through a long-term lens, 10, 15, maybe 20 years, then yeah, I mean, you know that you can absorb that volatility and that risk that is certainly going to be involved with any IPO. Now, I think where SpaceX takes on a different dynamic is like you got Elon Musk at the helm. It's going to be one of the largest, I think the largest IPO ever based on that. But what's also interesting about SpaceX shortly after its IPO, meaning once it does that initial public offering and it's actually on the exchange, you can go to your Schwabs, your Fidelities, your E-Trades, and you can go buy some shares. You can. That's essentially it. Now, how this looks like from a standpoint of what you would call a passive investor, which no arguments here, where if you're going to own an index fund, let's say you're going to buy a mutual fund or an exchange traded fund that is representative of an index or the market, if you will, maybe the S&P 500 or the NASDAQ 100 or the Russell 2000 or the all world market. I think Vanguard has that, and a number of other mutual fund and ETF shops. What's interesting about SpaceX is that it's likely going to be in these passive indexes relatively soon. And it was rumored that actually the S&P 500, and we're going to talk about this when we come back, like what determines a company or a stock actually being included into these indexes or indices, if you want to say, like what is the criteria for them to actually put in there? Because even if you said, hey, fingers up, like cross, no SpaceX, I don't want anything to do with it. Well, you got to understand how this inclusion into these indexes actually works. Because if you do not want to get any dollars invested in SpaceX and you're invested in these passive indexes, you might inevitably have some exposure to SpaceX indirectly. Or if you don't want to buy it directly because you don't want to be subject to that insane volatility, in my opinion, that's going to come with that investment, well, maybe you can own it through an index relatively soon. We'll be right back. We are back. This is the Real Money Pros. Do you want to buy SpaceX? Are you optimistic? Do you think that SpaceX is a good company, a good stock to purchase? Would love to hear your thoughts. Do you think Elon Musk is going to lead those investors to the promised land with all these various ventures that he has under the SpaceX umbrella? Or do you think the opposite? Do you think it's a bad idea to invest in SpaceX? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Phone lines are open. 979-59-MONEY. That's 979-59-MONEY. 596-6639. You can send us a text message to that same number as well. Because SpaceX, whether you like it or not, that IPO is going to be highly publicized. It already is, and it is going to have a market effect.
Yeah.
Whether you want to invest in it or not, whether you think it's going to be a profitable investment or not, but we got to understand what the dynamics are and how this is actually going to work functionally as an investor. And the thing with SpaceX, like I explained it to a client, it's like, I know there's a lot of hype right now. There's a lot of Elon Musk purists out there, enthusiasts out there, but you could look at Tesla. It took Tesla, some time, and you could argue that Tesla started out in its humble beginnings as a electric vehicle company, and now it's so much more, and now it's on the horizon of building humanoid robots that could potentially be, according to Elon Musk, the upcoming iPhone moment, where you could potentially buy a humanoid robot for $20,000 that many, many people in the U.S. will buy, according to Elon Musk. Now, whether that is reality or not, yet to be seen. If you look at Tesla's most recent earnings, they didn't even comment on that. So clearly it's going to take some time on that. But if you look at SpaceX, it's not just the space and rocket company. It's also SpaceX purchased XAI. So it also has the AI component, the AI division. Starlink, which arguably is the most profitable business venture under the SpaceX umbrella. That's also there, right? And there's also rumored that SpaceX could potentially buy Tesla. So there's a lot of moving parts with this company on its own. But I think the big takeaway is it's not profitable.
Right.
If you looked at the financials of SpaceX,
it's not making money
yet. It's losing money, and it's the most valuable non-profitable company out there. So I think that's something that you need to pay attention. Now, that's just a point in time right now. But if you look at the projection of these technologies and these underlying businesses and where that tide is going, at least in my opinion, or where those winds are going, I don't think it's out of question to think that the company will be profitable at some point in the future. It could take time, but as an investor, you got to understand that if this stock, when it IPOs, goes up and to the right, it's strictly going to be based on speculation for a lot of individuals out there that think, well, that mark is going to hit. But I think the question really becomes this as well: is this company overvalued, at the IPO? And
that's a legit question.
It is.
Yeah, and one of the things you got to take into consideration if you're going to buy it. I mean, people talk about price multiples and times earnings, all those things. There's no earnings.
Yeah.
That are positive.
Well, I mean, you could look at Tesla. I mean, and here's the one thing too. And SpaceX could develop. Even look at Google. Google started out as a search engine company, and now you look at Google. I mean, it's got YouTube. I mean, it's so much more than just a search engine. Now they have the AI component on there. So these things develop and grow over time. And if you look at Elon Musk, I mean, many view him as this day and age Howard Hughes. He's just he's got a mind that just operates at a different level, and
he's not afraid to throw money at stuff to see if it works.
No, and some people prefer him at the helm. And it's like I saw an interesting I think it was an article a few years ago where it talked about Tesla investors or Tesla boards. They can't do with Elon Musk and they can't do without him, right? It's like you take the good with the bad. Now, true, he's kind of taken a step back out of the political limelight, if you will. So I think that's probably given investors at least a little bit of relief, as far as the volatility that we're seeing for people who are combining those two things. I don't think that's going to be the case necessarily with SpaceX, but then you add in, once it's a publicly traded company, and now you start adding in the derivatives, the speculation, the option tradings on this, the shorts out there who are betting on this company to actually lose, which can exasperate things to the upside and the downside. So that's a big component. But again, do you want to own SpaceX or not? Do you think it's a good idea to own SpaceX or not? And what's your justification for that? 979-59-MONEY. It's 979-596-6639. Alex, let's talk about this potential inclusion into indexes.
Okay.
So let's talk about index investing for a minute. What is it, and why is it important?
So index investing is where you take an agreed upon grouping that is a measurement of either a sector of the stock market or a portion. I mean, the most well-known are two specifically, the Dow and S&P 500. I mean, I talk to plan participants all the time, and they're like, well, I see this thing on the news, and they say it's up, they say it's down. My account isn't doing exactly the same thing. Why is that? Well, if you want to do what the index does, you need to be in the index. And so a popular way of investing is to just invest in things that mirror these different indexes.
Yeah, like the S&P 500. So Standard & Poor's, that is the actual company that creates and sets the eligibility / criteria of what stocks and what companies are actually inside of the S&P 500. And they have profitability. So they have an earnings test. Like, what is the financial viability? Number one, what is the size of the company, aka its market capitalization? So it's got to be of a certain size. It's got to meet a financial viability test, and it also has to meet a liquidity and trading volume test. And also, there's a couple other things, but I mean those are really the main ones. Meaning, they determine who's in and who's out in the S&P 500. Now, which is interesting about SpaceX and these other IPOs that we talked that are coming down the horizon that are grabbing a lot of attention, which is OpenAI, creator of ChatGPT, and Anthropic, which is creator of Claude. These large language models that there's a lot of subscribers and a lot of individual and retail users use.
Correct.
But it was rumored that the S&P 500 was actually going to make adjustments, almost do a carve out, like an exception.
Yeah, to the rules that have been in place for really a long time, honestly.
For SpaceX, meaning that SpaceX would likely be included in the S&P 500 in a relatively short amount of time. Now, S&P came out just this past week and put that rumor to bed and said, no, we're not making any special exceptions for SpaceX or for Anthropic or for OpenAI. But that doesn't mean that SpaceX won't be included in one of these indexes, like the NASDAQ 100.
Right.
The NASDAQ 100 does not have such a strict criteria for it to be in there.
Yeah, most of them don't.
So likely if the NASDAQ, the Russell 2000, these various other indexes or these sector funds, they're likely going to pick up SpaceX relatively soon, probably within maybe a week or so, based on when that actual eligibility takes place. So what that means to you is that even if you didn't want to touch SpaceX with a 10-foot pole and you're invested in these passive indexes, which is representative of, bigger sections of the market, you're going to likely end up with some exposure to SpaceX.
Yeah.
Now, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, time will tell. Time will certainly tell. But bottom line is this. If you are looking to invest in SpaceX, in my opinion, it's gaining a lot of attention. There's risks with buying into highly anticipated IPOs. These are often driven by excitement, media attention, and just put a big boost on top of those when you factor in Elon Musk and SpaceX and a potential $1.8 trillion valuation.
You need to plan for a long-term hold. This isn't something you're going to want to, grab and sell in 3 days because it's worth 9 times as much. Now, I could be totally wrong. It might happen. Anything can happen. The market can always go up, down, or sideways.
Are you, just
personally?
Personal question. Like when SpaceX IPOs the first day, are you going to buy it?
No.
Okay. Are you going to wait a little bit and then buy it, or you just?
I haven't decided.
Okay.
Haven't decided. But if I were to buy it, I would wait a couple of weeks.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. I'm
personally,
with my personal money. Okay.
Yep.
I'm doing the same thing. To be clear.
Watch it for a little bit and wait. You know how it is. You go buy used cars so you don't have to pay for the depreciation off the lot. That's kind of how I look at these.
Yes. Now, could Alex and I be wrong with that?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. But that's
this
okay.
This is not advice. This is just a conversation.
No, we're not advocating for you to go out and buy SpaceX. But what we're saying is that these tried and true investment principles that have withstood the test of time and have rewarded disciplined investors to actually create legitimate and maintain legitimate wealth, those are the foundations of your decision making.
Correct.
So with SpaceX IPO, if you want to buy it the first day that starts trading, or if you have the opportunity to purchase it pre-IPO, understand why you're doing it and also make sure that you factor in the risks that are involved with it, and with any investment for that matter.
Yeah, for sure.
That's why diversification, these cliches of not putting all your eggs in one basket, these things should really hit home when it comes to these highly publicized and, with a lot of enthusiasm around these IPOs and these stocks becoming public.
Yeah.
Again, this is The Real Money Pros. Phone lines are open, 979-596-6639. You can give us a call, send us a text message. We actually got some text messaging coming through. We come back, let's talk about tax gain harvesting. Let's avoid those capital gains if possible. Welcome back to The Real Money Pros. Again, you can find us at therealmoneypros.com. You can get access to our sponsors. We are a sponsor-driven program. We are not here to sell. We are here to guide and educate. So therealmoneypros.com. It's where you can find our educational content. You can find previous podcasts. You can find our educational videos that we post about once a week at the best of our ability. Some more, covering various topics, whether it's taxes, retirement, and at the end of the day, whether we're talking about topics like SpaceX IPO and how this potentially could affect index investors, and if you're investing in a 401k, how are you going to get exposure to SpaceX? We're going to talk about topics like this, and we're going to talk about a number of other topics like retirement, tax efficiencies, all that. But one thing I think we can all agree on, and Alex, you've seen it, I've seen it with working with thousands of households at this point, and with people who have done a really good job and people who have blown things up and they need a lifeline or a strategy to get out of it, or you have people that have just found a higher degree of sophistication where how they were doing things are just no longer servicing them in the best way, right? At the end of the day, good financial decisions do not happen by accident. So if you are trying to navigate retirement decisions, tax decisions, business decisions, you just want more clarity around your financial future, finances right now, having the right guidance matters. If you want to get connected with a fiduciary financial advisor who can help you, visit therealmoneypros.com, click Find the Advisor tab, and we will get you connected with a fiduciary Apollon Wealth Management advisor who is a good fit for you. And if you're listening to this program, there's a really good chance that there's a good advisor that is in close proximity that we can get you connected with. So reach out to us. You can also text us, call us, 979-59-MONEY. We are live. That is 979-596-6639. You were talking about the SpaceX IPO, and I want to pivot the conversation and start talking about tax efficiencies, tax gain harvesting with and how if you're seeing gains, some unrealized gains on your brokerage statement, how you may not have to let those golden tax handcuffs restrict you from actually turning that paper gain into actually a quality of life impact. But I did find it interesting where SpaceX, which is it's highly anticipated IPO, that their mission statement on their regulatory filing is to build the systems and technologies necessary to make life multiplanetary, to understand the true nature of the universe, and to extend the light of consciousness to the stars.
Okay. None of that sounds profitable to me.
Well,
but you know what? I read something the other day, and as a old long lifetime Trekkie, I gotta say, when I read that he's like, the goal with SpaceX is to make Star Trek real, part of me was a little excited about that.
No, I do find like his thought process, and I mean his drive and his determination to go to Mars, really make a multi-planetary, make that an option. I find it interesting at the least. I mean, I'm a bit of a tech nerd, so I just think that idea on its own, pretty cool.
Right.
Now, you got to separate what you feel is pretty cool idea versus putting your hard-earned dollars that is like really geared around a strategy. Sometimes there's a disconnect between those things. Not saying that is the case with SpaceX, but if you're going to go and be very bullish on this IPO as far as an investor, just be prepared. I think you're good. My take is there's likely going to be volatility, as with, and this isn't just to do with SpaceX. This is just the lay of the land. Historically speaking, when you're talking about highly anticipated IPOs that have a bunch of excitement, a bunch of media driven behind them. Not saying don't go invest in it, and I'm not saying go invest it. I'm just saying just do your due diligence, make sure that you understand the risks that are involved, the downsides that are certainly a part of the upsides. It's always that risk reward balance. If you want a historic outsized risk or reward, you You got to be willing to know that there is a risk on the other side. I mean, case in point, look at chip stocks, semiconductors. They've been on a tear this whole year, and we saw a huge drop in the NASDAQ. I mean, a big pivot out of those chip stocks on Friday.
In one day.
I mean, it obviously hasn't taken away the entirety of their gains, but it just shows you that the volatility that's in line with those. And I do find it interesting as well when you talk about the excitement around these IPOs. Are we starting to see a pivot to where there's some liquidity needed to help spur the speculation in these highly anticipated IPOs? Again, initial public offerings. We're talking about SpaceX. We're talking about OpenAI. We're talking about Anthropic, which are AI companies.
Right.
These combined IPOs, we're talking about close to $3.5 trillion. So there's a lot of dollars that are going to need to go behind this. And you could argue that's another reason why we're seeing cryptocurrency really get kicked in the shorts as well. Yeah, Bitcoin dropped below $60,000, I think, on Friday as well. So this is kind of a tide, just with these big IPOs, it's a tide that's affecting all boats in this investing landscape, or this investing ocean, if you will. So, okay, 979-59-MONEY. Again, phone lines are open. You can text us 979-596-6639. Alex, let's talk about tax efficiencies. There's a really good chance if you've been invested in the tech sector, individual stocks, you're likely seeing some taxable gains on paper. And to be clear, this only applies to accounts that are non-qualified. So if you invest your money inside of a Roth IRA, a traditional IRA, a 401k, a SEP IRA, whatever the case is, obviously the taxes on that are deferred, meaning there's no taxable events if you were to sell something. There's a taxable event when you actually pull money out. But when you're dealing with a non-qualified investment, if you sell that investment, you're either going to pay capital gains long-term, short-term, or you'll actually recognize a capital loss if you actually sell that stock lower than what you purchased it for. So there's some interesting dynamics there, but we're going to go to the phone lines right now. Again, 979-596-6639. We're going to talk to Carlos calling out of North Carolina. Carlos, what can we do for you?
Wow. Well, I had some questions, and I had an idea, just a strategy to run by somebody that could answer, because I'm listening to your show. It's just really interesting. And I wanted, you guys sounded really competent. So I had.
Thank you.
Yeah. It's fun listening to the show. And I listened to it. Well, anyway, while I'm delivering mail.
But there, Carlos, what's your question?
Okay. Well, I'm going to retire, let's say in a year. I'm 61. So in a year, I'll get my full retirement. Like if I retire now, if I wait one more year, it's a 10% bigger retirement.
Oh.
And so it's not like a big giant retirement, but let's say it's $1,500 a month.
Okay.
So anyway, but it just by default, when I take my pension, it gives me 90% of my pension, so it reduces it by 10%, and then it makes my wife to be the survivor benefit, which would be half of what of my pension would be if I were to die.
Okay.
And so, but I thought about this strategy. You hear so many things about whole life is not good, this or that's good, annuities aren't good, but I was thinking to maybe buy a whole life insurance policy that has like a guaranteed percentage that it pays. I'm just making up 4 or 5%, but I could draw against it or take my money out, after a few years without any penalty. But the death benefit from that whole life policy would be so much more than her taking half of my pension, and then instead of having my pension be reduced by 10%, instead of getting $1,500 a month, get $1,800 a month, and I'd have that extra money every month to live off of, and I would still have the whole life policy in place that the death benefit is much more or acceptable, but I could always tap into that money also if I needed to. And I was trying to see if things, and I've just thought about maybe talking with you guys, further, but that was just my initial question that I've been thinking about for a couple
Yeah,
days.
it's a strategy called Pension Max. And the biggest thing is, first of all, that you qualify for enough insurance. And if the difference in what you make will pay for the premium. And sometimes a term policy for 20 years is enough. You don't have to pay for a whole life. But definitely something to explore. You're thinking in the right direction.
Yeah, Carlos, we're up against a break. There's a lot more questions we want to ask you because this is a great question. We're gonna really dive into the nuance and the details around this retirement plan because this is exactly what this is. A lot of moving parts and there's a lot of pitfalls that you can run into. And I think Alex and I can come up with some better solutions than the whole life policy, which comes with a lot of inefficiency. Sometimes it makes sense, sometimes it doesn't. But Carlos, if you can stay on the line, please do. We'll take your call at the start of the next hour. Welcome back to the Real Money Pros, hour number 3 of our 3-hour live program. We got fiduciary financial advisors here at your service to talk about money. And money can cover so many different topics like inheriting money as receiving it, inheriting money as far as like your estate plan, like crafting that together, retirement, making sure you have enough money to fund your retirement so you don't run out of money, investing money, taxes, which is money going out, and how do you save that, all of that great stuff. And that's what we're here to talk about. We are a sponsor-driven program. We are not here to sell you anything. We are fiduciary financial advisors. We want to guide you and give you good advice and good education, because the more education that you have, the more strategic you can be with your money-making decisions. Then you can contact us as we are live. Phone lines are open. You can call us or send us a text message, by the way, 979-59-MONEY. That is 979-596-6639. We've been getting some great calls, some great text questions coming out over the past couple hours, and we're going to get right into it. We're going to go to the phones. We have Jane calling out of San Diego. Jane, what can we do for you?
Yes, hi. In reference to what you were talking about earlier with Elon Musk, and I believe, was it June 12th? That his stock was supposed to be going public?
Yes.
What I'm curious at is I've been hearing different advertisements and things for people getting in, and I don't know what you'd call it, and I guess that's part of my question is, before the June 12th. And what they're talking about, and supposedly these are pretty big investors, like people who have made it big before. I can't remember his name, but I think the last is Brown. He was associated, I don't know if he was the head of Qualcomm at one point and made other big investments. And what they're talking about is that you could get in with a minimum. This is prior, though, again, to the June 12th, and I'm trying to understand what exactly it would be. If you got in with $500 and they're claiming that, you could make up to $500,000. Now, they didn't say a time frame or anything like that, but I'm curious, what do you call that? It almost sounds like you are buying stocks, but according to them, you're getting it before June 12th.
No, great question, Jane. So we can kind of split this up a little bit. I mean, as far as the advertisement that you heard, I mean, since I don't know it exactly, it's tough to say like what exact dynamic they're talking about. What they could be referring to is, you put a bit of money in there. Maybe they have a private investment that you do a subscription agreement to, and then you're part of a pool of investors that you have like a prorated share because they already own some of those SpaceX shares pre-IPO. But
okay.
now here's another thing. Like if you were interested in buying shares of SpaceX before it actually hits the exchanges, and it could go up, down, left, or right, or before all the mayhem, if you will, if you want to call it that, starts, and you want to get into that, there are probably some easier routes to take. So generally in an IPO, an initial public offering, these stocks, like usually it's about 10%. So they're going to issue a number of stocks that are available or shares that can be purchased, and you have big institutions, you have institutional investors, pension funds. Usually the bulk of those available shares are already earmarked to those, what you would call institutional investors. And for the retail investors like yourself, myself, Alex, if we wanted to purchase some, generally that's a small amount, maybe 10% at most. Now, what's interesting about the SpaceX IPO is that Elon Musk set aside, I think it was about 35% of those shares to be available for retail investors. So I do know that Charles Schwab, E-Trade, Fidelity, I think Robinhood, and even SoFi for that matter, they actually, and there could be more, but these are the ones that just come top of mind, where you can actually put in your interest that if you want to purchase these. So I know Charles Schwab, I think they require a minimum brokerage account value of $100,000. So there are some hurdles. I think E-Trade, there's no minimum portfolio size, but you got to be a U.S. resident. You have to have an active account. And essentially what you do is you submit your interest. There's no guarantee that those allotment of shares would actually be available to you. But essentially, you go to these various brokers or custodians, and if they have a mechanism for you to submit interest, then you do. And you say, great, I would like to do this amount of money to pick up, I want to put $100,000 potentially to get this if it's available. So then if it's approved and those shares are allotted to you, then you've already submitted your interest. And then if you actually accept it, then as long as you have the cash available, then that cash would then turn into those SpaceX shares before it's actually publicly traded on the exchanges. Now, let's imagine if you did that, what this would actually look like. You would have those shares in your brokerage account, and then it's going to be at the mercy of the whipsaw of the market at that point, right? So let's imagine, I think the rough valuation, I think it's anticipated to be $135 a share. So let's assume that it is valued at $135 a share, and then you put in, let's say, $50,000, $100,000, $20,000, whatever the case is. You'll get that amount of shares. It'll actually show in your account that you own those. And then at that point, it's just like any stock. Like after it's publicly traded, you'll see the values go up. You might see them go down. You can trade it on the open market. You can sell it. You can purchase more. But that's to look at the advertisement on its own that you were listening to. That's probably what it was referring to. I get a little skeptical when they say, yeah, you could turn your 5,000 into 500,000. It's like, well, that's completely based on the performance of SpaceX, and no one has a crystal ball of where that's going.
True. I realize that, but I was just curious, though, outside of it, almost sounds to me like the ones, if you were to invest or whatever you call it with Fidelity and that, now, do those only happen on June 12th, or those also are happening prior to June 12th? I think what the ads that I was listening to, they were probably saying because you could invest $500, which I assume probably is too small for the Fidelities and the other, or who are buying it through them. But are they called? What are they called? Like, they're not really. Or are they all called shares before June 12th? It just confuses me.
Yeah, it's a pre-offering.
Yeah, it's a pre-offering. A pre-IPO, yes. And I do know that some of these, like your Schwabs, I think Fidelity does have a minimum amount. I think Charles Schwab does have a minimum amount. From my understanding, E-Trade does not have a minimum amount. Like, meaning if you wanted to say $500, then from my understanding that there's no minimum portfolio size. I think that's the same thing with Robinhood as well. So, it's one of those things where you look at these reputable custodians, these reputable brokers like a Schwab, like an E-Trade. If E-Trade doesn't have a minimum portfolio size, and it's great. All I need to do is open an account and have the money in there. And if I want to get the pre-IPO shares, like meaning before it becomes publicly traded and they allot you those shares, then that's exactly what it would look like.
So in other words, it would be you would have more reliable behind you, and it would work. You would, if you had invested, say, the 500 with this, ad thing that I'm talking about. But it does sound like an investor who knows what he's doing. But let's just say, somebody invested through him, and then somebody invested through Robinhood or something. You would still, if you put in the same amount of money, you would still be getting the same amount.
I would hope so.
Yeah, I would hope so, because.
But what you're saying is you would have it more reliable if you did it through Robinhood or E-Trade or those other ones, because you would have a company behind you.
Well, yeah, because you're not working with an investor who's advertising to say, "Hey, put your money with me," and then you can get because it's interesting to. We'd have to look at the devil's always in the details, right? Of okay, if I put $500 with this, using air quotes here, investor. well, where's that money actually going? Like, is it actually earmarked for that I'm going to own these shares of SpaceX or whatever company, or is this going into this bigger pool of money that has exposure to it? The devil's going to be in the details with those. Versus if you went with, say, with an E-Trade or a Charles Schwab, like they're how that company is operating is just they're just lining up the purchaser of like, hey, here I am. I want to buy said stock. And they say, great, we have the platform to then take your dollars to allow you to purchase said stock. Like there's no middle person. There's no commingling. It's just you have money that you want to use to purchase stock. And then these companies say, great, we have the platform to get that done. Now, not all platforms are going to have it, but from my understanding, your Charles Schwab, your E-Trades, your Fidelities, I think Robinhood as well, they're amongst that group that if there's a retail investor like yourself that wants to get pre-IPO shares before it's actually on the market June 12th, then you can take those routes.
And one last question. Have you seen in the past any benefit or more of a benefit that you get from investing prior
Jane,
to it going public?
Great question. We got to take a break, and I'm going to answer that question when we come back. This is The Real Money Pros. Stay with us. We are back. This is The Real Money Pros. We are live here for you. You can call us. I'd like to welcome in Chicago. I'd like to welcome in California. If you're listening, we are live and here for you. You can call us. You can text message us. Phone lines are open, 979-59-MONEY. That is 979-596-6639. Obviously, the topic that we've covered in the second hour, and obviously we're getting some great calls and great text messaging coming through. It's about this hype around this SpaceX IPO, this initial public offering, and just the sheer size of it. And also, is it a good idea to purchase SpaceX or not? And is there a benefit to purchasing SpaceX stock before it's actually traded on these exchanges? Meaning, generally when a company goes IPO, like it's ready to go from the private space to be a publicly traded company to the likes of your AT&Ts, your Teslas, and all that, when they do this IPO, there's going to be an allotment of shares that are available, like that are eligible to trade. And generally, when a company IPOs, majority, about 90%, if not more, those are earmarked to larger institutional investors. Think about, I don't know, Alex, your pension funds, your
mutual funds,
your mutual funds.
Yeah, private equity funds. Mm-hmm. Yep.
All of that. So
we're talking millions of dollars funds,
if not more, like
maybe triple,
maybe billions,
millions.
Right?
Yeah.
So generally, there's just not a lot of leftover. So there's a lot of barriers for a retail investor who's not in that space to acquire these positions pre-IPO.
Yeah, and they actually did something unique with SpaceX in that they intentionally reserved 30% of the shares to be available to people who are not in those situations. But all of the places where you can go and you can get them, they all have conditions. They all say you have to have this amount of cash set aside, sometimes the size of account you've got to get. And they all are very clear to say that doing these things does not guarantee you will receive the IPO shares.
It's basically saying it's a letter of intent, if you will, of interest of... Yeah, because
which is technically even the big ones how they are.
Yeah, which is what we're looking at. So Charles Schwab, at least from what I'm reading, is that hey, if you have a minimum brokerage account value of $100,000, then you can put in your interest that you would like to purchase SpaceX before it's actually traded on the exchanges, right? So there's Schwab. E-Trade is participating in there. From my understanding, E-Trade does not have a minimum portfolio size. Fidelity, I believe they require a higher minimum. I don't know if it's a minimum of what you want to purchase. I think it's just a minimum of how much money you actually have in your account. But if you go to those institutions, those brokers, those custodians, they're going to tell you what the criteria is. So now let's imagine that you do that. You say, great, I submit my interest, and you actually end up with the shares. There's no guarantee, but let's imagine that you do end up with them. And Jane, who called, she had a great question. She said, well, what's the benefit of doing that? Like, what is the benefit of actually getting shares of SpaceX before it's actually publicly traded and going up and down and changing hands? And the volume of that stock is probably going to be to the millions, right, as far as daily volume, which is not out of the question. So now we look at, is that a good idea or not? What's the benefit? Well, the benefit is that you're getting it at that initial price. Now, it could go up or it could go down. So it's a bit of a, if you're looking at this as a short-term thing, where if you're in your mind, you think that, well, SpaceX is going to go up, right? I feel like it's undervalued, like, because it's rumored right now that SpaceX, its share price pre-IPO is going to be $135.
Okay.
Now the question is, once it hits the NASDAQ exchange and starts changing hands, like it's actually publicly traded, is it going to go? Again, this is assuming that it's going to be locked in at 135. And let's imagine Jane, because she was the caller. Let's imagine she submitted her intent and she got, let's say, 50 shares of SpaceX at $135 a share before it actually is publicly traded. Now, morning hits, market opens, I think, which is going to be June 12th. Market opens June 12th. We're off to the races. We don't know what's going to happen with SpaceX. We don't know if it's going to go up, if it's going to go down. If it goes up, I mean, if it goes to the moon, no pun intended, or goes to Mars, no pun intended, like if it's up and to the right, then obviously you look at it as like, oh, that was a great decision. I bought at a great price, and now the market, there's consensus that it's valuing it at a much higher amount, which there you go. You could look at that as a good thing. But it could easily work on the exact opposite. You could see that stock drop by a fair amount. And there is some speculation
it could be like $75 by the end of the day.
And there is some speculation that could happen based on what the financials came out from that company recently. That's just not profitable. But again, you'll have investors that are looking at this much longer term. And if the consensus is this stock is worth $150, $200, and there you go. But you could also have consensus where it says this stock is worth $100, and that could happen day one of the trading. Or you could see it hit that mark at one point in the trading day, and you could see it hit the bottom at one point in the trading day. So to answer that question directly of what's the benefit, Alex, like you said, how did
we don't know.
Yeah, we don't know. But the benefit is that you get at that initial price that is determined pre-IPO. That's really the benefit.
It's that first trade.
Now, if you are bullish, you're optimistic on SpaceX or any IPO for that matter, because there's some bigger IPOs that are coming down the horizon relatively quickly. You have Anthropic. You have OpenAI, which is they basically run these large language models. Anthropic is Claude. OpenAI is ChatGPT, and these companies are coming out with some big valuations as well. There's going to be a lot of enthusiasm on these positions as well. I don't know if they're going to allot that number of shares pre-IPO. Like, I don't know if your Schwabs or Fidelities are even going to give retail investors the ability like you can with SpaceX, but you can do it. I'm not saying not to. I'm not saying do it. But
you can still buy it on day one. You just might not be the first trade.
So and this is where you could kind of look at this through a couple different, so then you can say, okay, great answer, Jeremiah. Great answer, Alex. Like, you're not telling me to buy it. You're also not telling me to not buy it. And you're telling me that there could be risk involved. I understand all that. Like, do you have a little bit more strategy here that you could give me? No, 100%. Like, if your concern is that, well, if I buy it pre-IPO, but I got this feeling that it could drop dramatically from that first trading day, like it's going to take some time, get its wiggles out before there's what's called price discovery. Then if you're concerned that it's going to fall to the downside, then maybe the initial dollar amount that you wanted to invest in it, do a portion of that pre-IPO if you can, and then another portion you have there to basically purchase shares if it goes to the downside on those few first days of trading, right? So then you're not just left like, I made a big mistake doing my main investment on the pre-IPO. It's like, hey, you could do a little bit here, and then you maybe dollar cost average. Like, you have a timeline and a set dollar amount in which you put the money in. Bottom line is, the point I'm making is you have a strategy, and you follow the strategy. It's not some shoot from the hip. I got a gut feeling, or I think it might do this, and I think it might do that, and then you're just kind of clicking buy and sell this, that, and the other. Actually, set a strategy and follow the strategy. Disciplined investors get rewarded. Are you going to make the perfect decision every time? No, but you do your due diligence. You set a strategy to cover the things that you are most concerned about. So whatever happens, you feel good about that decision because you took your time to develop the protocol behind that decision that you're making as far as your investment. And that's been tried and true. And that's what I would recommend if you're looking to get on SpaceX. We'll be right back. And we are back. This is The Real Money Pros. We are live. Call us, text us, 979-59-MONEY. That's 979-596-6639. I'm Jeremiah Bates. She is Alex Alexandra Lundgren. We are fiduciary financial advisors. Visit therealmoneypros.com. It's where you can access our educational content. We're a sponsor-driven program. No sales here. We're just here to give guidance, education, and you can find much more of that educational content on therealmoneypros.com. And listen, we're talking through topics like as we do every Saturday. And if there's one thing that I've learned in my many years as a fiduciary financial advisor, good financial decisions do not happen by accident. Whether you're navigating retirement, taxes, business decisions, which is a number of them, like how do you set up an employer retirement plan? You want to do an ESOP, you want to do a business transition plan. How do you take all of your sweat, blood, and tears that you've built into this business and now you're getting approached by a potential buyout? And how do you do it? And how do you transition that? There's a lot of things that need clarity to determine the success of your financial future, and having the right guidance certainly matters. So if you want to get connected with a fiduciary advisor who can help you with all these, again, visit therealmoneypros.com, click on the Find an Advisor tab. If you're listening to us, there's a really good chance that there is an advisor who is in close proximity to you, and we will help you get connected. And the great thing is we got a deep bench, if you will. We got great fiduciary advisors across the country through our Paulin Wealth Management Advisor Network. And we're going to connect you with who we feel is the best fit. If you want someone local that you can meet with face-to-face, great. You might get connected with me. You might get connected with Alex. We're going to connect you with the advisor who is best suited for your situation. I mean, in this world of this financial advisory world, there's some expertise that are in. You don't know. You're not an expert in everything. Like
right, you can't. You just can't. Especially since the rules change all the time.
Yes, I am not an expert in Social Security, but Alex is. So if I
geek out over this,
she does. If I have questions about Social Security, I'm going to walk a couple feet down my office. I'm going to stand inside of her doorway and I'm going to interrupt her doing important work and say, "Hey, I got this question." She's gracious enough to take the time to educate me on that. But that's just one example. So again, visit therealmoneypros.com, click a Find an Advisor tab. I'm sure you've been thinking about certain things, but there's ideas and then there's action. So having someone that can help guide you to take that action, those logistical steps to make sure that the things are done the right way. Like think of a rollover for that matter. It's like even if you worked for an employer for years and you cut the corporate cord, now you want to remove that account out of that 401k into an IRA. The terminology is extremely important to know. You got to make sure the execution, the steps that you take to get that done is done correctly so you don't run into a big tax bogey or unwind something. Like case in point, I was meeting with someone and they recently retired. They needed to put a new roof on their house and they pulled money out of the IRA. And unknowingly that was going to cause a tremendous tax bogey. They had other accounts that had different taxation of where they held their money. It's like, if you just would have pulled from this account, you would have saved a tremendous amount of money on taxes because you're getting a tax credit because you're not 65. You're getting a tax credit that significantly lowers your medical premiums. And that medical premium tax credit is based on your gross income. So the fact that you took money out of your traditional IRA, you just rose your gross income, which is going to result in a penalty or payback of those tax credit. So here's what we're going to do. You did that IRA distribution about 10 days ago. Let's put that money back in via the 60-day rollover. We're going to true it up on your taxes so that's not counted as a taxable distribution. And then we're going to use that money out of your non-qualified account, which doesn't have any tax ramifications with it, to make sure that you maintain your tax credit, number one, so you're not penalized and you're being more tax efficient. Those are the types of things that we're talking about of like the guidance. Like that term is a bit vague. It's like that's what that actually looks like in real life. So having the right guidance certainly matters. Again, phone lines are open, 979-59-MONEY, 979-596-6639. We've had some good conversations about SpaceX. I want to get to the, on this topic of taxes. And let's just imagine SpaceX. You you purchase it the day it IPOs, and you made the right decision, meaning it just goes up and to the right. I'm painting a hypothetical, by the way, and I want to be very clear. I'm not advocating for someone to go out and buy SpaceX, and I'm not advocating for someone to not go buy SpaceX. What I'm stating is that having a good strategy and thinking it through, very important. Understand the upside, and also understand the risks that come with that potential upside that I'm sure that you are seeking. But let's just imagine a hypothetical scenario, Alex, that SpaceX just goes up into the right. Like it's up 50% after the first year of owning it. And now you see these paper gains. Like in your brokerage account, you're going to see the gain that you've made. And there's also an interesting number there that you'll usually see when you're looking at your holdings, your positions. It's going to show your cost basis. And then in the next column next to it, you're going to see what's called your unrealized gain. And if you own that in a non-qualified account, meaning it's not held in an IRA, it's not held in a Roth, it's not held in a 401k, it's just an account that you own in your name, you and your spouse own jointly, or it's in the name of your trust, that unrealized gain number, if you decide to sell, let's just imagine you sold all the shares, in this case, SpaceX, a year later. You sell it, there's going to be a tax consequence from that.
Right. You're going to have if it's a year and a day or more, you're going to have a long-term capital gain. There's kind of a neat thing that can be done is there are tax years where you want to take the gain when it's long-term capital gain because, and I think there's a misunderstanding in this here. If your total income, including the gain, joint filing, is below 98.9, and that's after your deductions or, whether it's the standard or itemized.
So think taxable income.
Taxable income, exactly. It's your taxable income and the gain added together that is taxable income. If it's below this 98.9, those long-term gains actually pay zero federal tax. So, for example, if what your W-2 1099 income wages are after all your deductions, let's say that they're $45,000. Well, the first $24,800 is at 10% federal. And then the next amount between that $24,800 and $45,000 is at 12% federal. And then you now have about $53,000 available in 0% long-term capital gains in that bracket. So what you can do is go sell these and then just rebuy them and reset your cost basis, but realize this long-term capital gain. So if you have that big dollar amount, you're not worried about taking a tax hit on it down the road. You can get it out of the way right now when you know it's 0%.
Tax gain harvesting.
Yep.
And by the way, tax loss harvesting kind of works the opposite, where if a stock is actually lower than what you paid for it, you can sell it at a loss, which you can use to offset gains. So maybe that's taken
but
into
it's got a
too.
caveat.
30-day wash sale.
You cannot rebuy it within 30 days. On a gain harvest, they don't care.
They do not. So essentially what you are doing is you're taking advantage of these long-term capital gains rates. Now, here's the thing that you got to pay attention to is that when you're looking at gross income, gross income affects a lot of things as far as like how it's taxed.
Right.
Like, think of like Medicare and IRMA charge. They're looking at your gross income. Well, modified adjusted gross income. There's a few add backs on that modified adjusted gross income, but they're going to look at your gross. They're going to look at your MAGI for your tax credits. If through the Affordable Care Act, they're going to look at your MAGI for your IRMA charges. They're going to look at your MAGI of how your Social Security is taxed. They're going to look at, they look at a little bit different, but you get the point. When it comes to capital gains your capital gains rate is determined on your taxable income, meaning you have all these ways that you can reduce your taxable income. Maybe you're putting money in a traditional IRA, into an HSA, and then you have your deductions. Most people are familiar with their standard deductions because standard deductions are so high. It's a bit of a rare bird that you're itemizing. Right. Or if you're itemizing above and beyond that standard deduction, that's where you arrive at your actual taxable income. So they're going to look at that number and then add in the gain from the sale that you did in your stock. And as long as that number, Alex, to your point, in 2026, if you are married filing jointly, if that number is $98,900 or below, you're paying zero capital gains tax on that sale.
Yep, federally.
So if you see that, if you can do that in your tax forecasting or closer to the end of the year, you can sell that stock, not have a tax bogey resulting from that sale. So you get to keep what you've earned, which is a great spot to be in. Meaning, and there's no taxable consequence.
And if it's something you want to hold long term, rebuy it.
You just go rebuy it. You're essentially resetting your basis. So that's where you can be strategic on the tax side of things, because it's great to have growth on an investment, but it's even better when you can not pay any taxes on it potentially. Now, if you do go over that 98,900, that long-term capital gains rate is 15%, which
on the part that's above.
On the parts that's above.
98.
So it's a lot. Generally speaking, it's more efficient than your ordinary income bracket, your ordinary income rates. But it's just important to understand these tax efficiencies. You have income that will be subject to ordinary income rates at the state level or federal level, and then you have the capital gains rates. You can be strategic around both. We'll be right back. We're talking about, these highly appreciated stocks, and you're looking at these paper gains. It's not inside of a retirement account, meaning if you were to sell that stock, you're going to run into a tax bogey. And understanding how these categorizations of taxes work, because if you'll have some income that is not going to be subject to ordinary income rates, at least on the federal side, and you'll have some income that you receive through like selling an appreciated asset, like a stock, or maybe it's a rental property that you'll pay long-term capital gains on. And quick note is that if you sell an appreciated asset that you've owned for under a year, you'll pay short-term capital gains. And short-term capital gains, it's taxed to your ordinary income rates.
Yep.
So wherever
there's no break.
Yep. So wherever you fall in the marginal tax brackets, that's where that income is going to fall. But understanding this, and also too, when you look at the income that's arrived off of investments, whether it's a rental property, obviously with a rental property, there's tax benefits that are involved with that, because generally you have expenses for operating that rental property. You have depreciation on that asset that can help offset that income, which is great. When it comes to investments, whether it's in a stock, if you receive a dividend payment, sometimes those dividends are classified as a qualified dividend, which is taxed at a long-term capital gains rate.
Which is fantastic.
Which is great. But when you understand these different categories of taxes and how they affect other items like Medicare, for instance.
Right.
Medicare, you have a Part B premium, and that Part B premium, aka your IRMA charge, if you will, what you pay as far as your Part B premium is going to be based on your gross
income.
It's going to be based on your income.
Yeah.
And that's your gross income, which includes your capital gain. So even though your capital gain is taxed at a different rate, it's not taxed the same as your ordinary income. That capital gain is included in your modified adjusted gross income or gross income. That is going to determine where do you fall for Medicare Part B and your IRMA charges. Where do you fall for tax credits if you are receiving a subsidized healthcare plan through the Affordable Care Act? Where does that fall? So
everything stacks. And so it's for me, it helps to have a visual to see how it all plays out. But your income all adds together and stacks up, and then that's how you figure out what you pay tax-wise on that. But as far as things that are income-based to say what the cost is, it all just counts pretty much.
I had a meeting with a client a couple weeks ago, and we were talking about some strategies, some Roth conversion, some gain harvesting. You know, they have a loss carry forward from previous years, meaning it was about maybe 10 years ago. They had a substantial taxable loss on something that they sold, and capital losses you can use to offset gains. If you don't use them all up in the same year, they carry forward over the years. So we're talking about these strategies. They mentioned, okay, so we won't do Roth conversions because we recognize the capital gain. I said, no, we're going to do both. They kind of looked at me. I was like, well, here's why. And we dove into exactly what I was talking about. I said, here's what's subject to your capital gains rates.
Yeah.
Here's what's subject to ordinary income. Being efficient, we can recognize actual capital gain without messing anything up. And then we can also execute these Roth conversions and stay efficient with this effective tax rate, staying within these marginal brackets. But the way we could arrive at that is understanding how these all work. And don't forget the net investment income tax. Like, meaning if you If you sell something at a large gain, you could be subject to an additional 2.8. Is it 2.8 or 3.8?
3.8 on the net income, I think, and 2
Net investment income tax. Yep.
And the Medicare's like 2.9 or something.
So
I'll look them.
Yep.
Okay.
So point being, you recognize these good gains, but you can make that juice so much more sweeter when you squeeze it out, when you forecast the taxes. And if you can find strategies and ways to mitigate those taxes, great. But even at the end of the day, understanding how it all works and then what the tax bogey is going to be so you're prepared for it, that clarity and peace of mind is, in my opinion, worth its weight in gold. So
all right, so the net investment income tax is 3.8. The additional Medicare is an extra 0.9 that takes the total instead of 1.45 to 2.35.
There you go. We got a text message coming in through our text line. Again, it's 979-59-MONEY. It's 979-596-6639. I'm going to paraphrase this, kind of long. I've owned the same mutual fund for 20 years, and I have a large unrealized gain. My advisor mentioned harvesting gains while I'm in a lower tax bracket. Why would I voluntarily pay taxes if I don't need the money? It's a great question.
Sometimes the taxes are going to be less if you pay them now than if you pay them later. And part of that is if this gain is just going to continue to grow and grow and grow, well, maybe you'll have two small amounts that'll end up in that 0% instead of a big one that runs into the 15.
It's a great point. Like especially if you have a year, maybe you have an outlier year where you know your income's lower, take advantage of it.
Absolutely.
Take advantage of it. So in this case, sometimes the text questions, we got to throw in some assumptions here, but I would assume that the advisor that he's working with is telling him to actually recognize a taxable gain because he is in a lower tax bracket. So meaning maybe his income is low enough to where he would in fact pay no taxes on those dollars.
Yeah.
And we just talked about that, how your capital gains rates work at 0%, 15%, or 20%, and how that's based on your taxable income. And by the way, if you're over 65, if you're over 65 per the big beautiful bill with this enhanced senior deduction, to where if you're married filing jointly, that could be a potential $12,000 on top of your standard deduction.
Right. So you're going to show $12,000 less taxable income.
So that extra room might be the buffer that you need to stay under that threshold for this year, $98,900. If you stay under that threshold of taxable income, you would pay zero capital gains on an appreciated sale of a stock as long as you stay within that threshold.
Yep, and you've held it for more than a year.
And the beauty of this is you're getting tangible savings. Maybe it's not low-hanging fruit but it's immediate, and you don't need investment returns to keep that net gain in your pocket. It's just being strategic and understanding and having the right guidance. So again, good financial decisions don't happen by accident. Tax efficiencies do not happen by accident. Again, this is The Real Money Pros. Visit therealmoneypros.com. We're going to take a 6-day break, and we'll be back next Saturday.